Good morning, everybody. Here is JVN Professor Dr. R.K. Patni, Dean, Faculty of Law and Governance, Jyoti Vidyapeeth, Women's University, Jaipur. Today we are going to discuss defamation under the law of torts. Traditional role of the courts. Protection of individuals from the damage that can be caused to the reputation by untrue statements made about them. Numerous complex defenses have been developed over the years. Before the introduction of the conditional fee agreements, only the very rich could afford to bring legal claims. Balancing exercise. Article 10, European Convention on Human Rights, protects freedom of expression. The role of the judges in defamation cases is to ensure that freedom of speech does not outweigh the interest of the individual. Some would argue that the conflicting interests involved cannot be balanced and that the role of the courts should not be regarded as a balancing exercise, as the interests are not of equal weight. More recent developments. Article 10(1) ECHR states, everyone has the right to freedom of expression. This right shall include freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart information and ideas without interference by public authority and regardless of frontiers. Article 10(2). The exercise of these freedoms, since it carries with it duties and responsibilities, may be subject to formalities, conditions, restrictions or penalties as are prescribed by law and are necessary in a democratic society, in the interest of national security, territorial integrity or public safety, for the prevention of disorder or crime, for the protection of health or morals, for the protection of the reputation or rights of others, for preventing the disclosure of information received in confidence, or for maintaining the authority and impartiality of the judiciary. In the balance, Article 8 ECHR, the right to privacy and family life subject to similar exceptions. Two forms of defamation. Number 1, legal, permanent form. Number 2, slander, transitory form. Note the practical distinctions between the two. Note also that there may be criminal libel. Other ways of protection, the reputation. Injurious falsehood, malicious prosecution. Defamation consists of the publication of a false and defamatory statement concerning another person without lawful justification. What is publication? The statement must be published to a person other than the claimant alone. It is not actionable in civil law to make a defamatory statement to the claimant alone out of earshot of a third person, nor to write a letter to the claimant containing defamatory material. If the claimant shows a potentially defamatory letter to someone else, there is a defense of volunty, as the claimant, not the defendant, has published the statement. A defamatory statement. Sim vs. Stretch, 1936 to All ER 1237. A statement which tends to lower the claimant in the estimation of right-thinking members of society generally, and in particular to cause him to be regarded with feelings of hatred, contempt, ridicule, fear and disdain. Lord Atkinson. Not also the possibility of innuendo. Role of the jury. To establish the standard of right-thinking members of society, to decide whether the claimant was defamed. In recent years, a much more limited role in assessing damages. Defamation Act 1996. The court shall not be asked to rule whether a statement is arguably capable of bearing a particular meaning. This rule was introduced to enable the court to fix in advance the ground rules on possible meanings. Either party may now apply for an order to determine before them trial whether the words in question are actually capable of bearing a particular meaning. Words must refer to the claimant. The claimant must have been identifiable by the statement as an individual. Note the possibility of a defense if the claimant is named accidentally in a work of fiction without lawful justification. Note the numerous and sometimes complex defenses available. Number 1. Innocent dissemination. Volunteer. Then next is accord and satisfaction. Next is apology and mitigation. Section 3, Defamation Act 1996, embodied in CPR PT 53. Unqualified offer of amends under Section 2, Defamation Act 1996. Defenses: justification in truth, unintentional defamation, the Electronic Commerce EC Directive Regulation 2002, absolute privilege, qualified privilege, fair comment on a matter of public interest, limitation period exceeded. Remedies are damages, injunction, apologies in accordance with prescribed procedures. Recent development: conditional fee agreements, diminishing importance of the jury, new and improved offer of amends procedures, lower awards of damages, possibility of summary judgment in certain cases. General defense in tort. Some specific defenses are available in a suit for tort. These defenses are specific and find application in the relation to a fixed nature of tort. Other defenses are general in nature and can be classified as the defense of consent, when plaintiff is the wrongdoer, inevitable accident, act of God. Act in relation to private defense, necessity, act in respect to statutory authority. The defense of consent. This defense is based on the principle of volunty non fit injuria. A person who has voluntarily agreed to suffer harm cannot claim damages for such harm. This consent to suffer harm can be either expressed or even implied. However, such consent must be given freely and not obtained by fraud or any other illegal means. When plaintiff is the wrongdoer, this defense is based on the maxim ex terpi causa non oritur ex eo, which means no action arises from an immoral cause. So, when the action of the plaintiff unlawful itself, it might lead to a defense in general. Inevitable accident. Inevitable accident is such where the injury could not have been avoided in spite of reasonable care on part of the defendant. In a suit for tort, it is always a good defense if it can be shown that the defendant could not avoid the injury sustained by the plaintiff in spite of his reasonable effort. Act of God. An act of God is an inevitable accident arising out of the working of natural forces which is beyond human control and unprecedented in nature and time. It must be extraordinary and unanticipated as well. The rule of strict liability, as in Reliance v. Fletcher, has incorporated the concept of this defense. Act in relation to private defense. In case of imminent threat to life or property, use of force for defense of the same is justified. However, use of such force must be reasonable and should be in proportion to the requirement. necessity. If damage is caused to avoid a greater damage, it becomes a good defense. Act in respect to statutory authority. Any damage arising out of an act that the law prescribes or the statute authorizes will never become actionable, even though in absence of such statutory authority, it is an offense in tort. The very first defense that comes under the general defenses in tort law is voluntary non-fit injuria, which is also known as defense for consent. So here are the notes for voluntary non-fit injuria with all the leading cases. This principle has been summarized in the Latin maxim voluntary non-fit injuria, which is translated as voluntarily suffered. It is a well-settled principle in law that no man can sue for a tort to which he had consented either expressly or impliedly. No man can